Another rant video. Who am I gonna piss off today? Nobody knows. Actually, everybody will know because they'll screech and cry and piss and shit in the comments. I have another phenomenon. They never end. It's always just one phenomenon after another. Predation on the internet and in real life has been a problem for a very fucking long time. I'm talking thousands of years, a long time. And more recently, as in the past couple of years, we've been able to give children in particular the tools necessary to protect themselves and advocate for themselves against predators online and in real life. This is ultimately a good thing. No shit. I'm seeing kids advocate for themselves and protect themselves more than ever. Before, when a 14-year-old would get attention from a 21-year-old man, she would see that as a compliment. But nowadays, 14-year-old girls are better understanding that this is not a compliment and he's a fucking weirdo. And that's a good thing. I find, though, that whenever a good thing happens in the social spheres, it comes with a price, and the price is usually lack of critical thinking and lack of nuance. That ends up making the discourse surrounding the subject unbearable. People on the internet like to throw around the word pedophilia like it's a fucking football. And I think ultimately it is hurting people more than it is helping people. Because equipping children with knowledge and power to advocate for themselves and protect themselves is a good thing, and we should continue doing that. What is not a good thing is when pedophilia became a buzzword and we started just throwing it around in order to, A, seem enlightened on the internet, or B, to just cause a fuss for the sake of causing a fuss, to cause discourse for the sake of causing discourse, and C, just using it as an insult to people you don't like. I've said this before, actually. People will throw around the word pedophilia like a fucking football and will refuse to acknowledge how that negatively affects actual pedophilia cases, how that negatively affects, the social strides we've made as a whole. I mean, first and foremost, you're turning the word pedophilia and pedophile into buzzwords, which you know how buzzwords work on the internet, right? They get used to the point where they mean nothing anymore. You render these words useless, and then people that actually needed those words cannot use them anymore because you have used and abused these words to the point there's no way to use these abused buzzwords anymore. But this isn't just about turning pedophilia into a buzzword. This is about the lack of nuance that has been curated on the internet, almost in a weird moral panic kind of way. Now, the moral panic I speak of started out, once again, with good intentions, protecting children. But as we've seen from conservatives and their whining and crying, protecting children can be used and thrown around to justify moral panic. This has manifested in a very strict set of rules that people are following and forcing authoritarian style onto other people, even though they do not help the situation. This has manifested in people accusing adults engaging with other adults as being pedophiles because of, child coding. This has manifested into gatekeeping, what adults can and cannot enjoy in terms of hobby, clothing, even just the way some adults act. And it has overall been blown out of proportion to the point where it's not helping children anymore. It's certainly not helping adults. And it's rather becoming authoritarian social policing. Let's start out with one of my first examples of this issue. I don't know who needs to hear this, but an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old dating hold your fucking panties, is not pedophilia. Who would have fucking guessed an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old are the same age? This is what I mean by strict rule following. If you are the of age, you are no longer allowed to date someone, whether they are 2 months apart from you or a year apart from you, because they aren't of age. That's based on this moral panic about pedophilia, even though 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds dating is not pedophilia. You see, I would be more interested in calling it pedophilia or predation if there was a 13-year-old involved or a 14-year-old involved. Like, yeah, an 18-year-old should not be going after 13 and 14-year-olds. They could possibly be in middle school while you're almost off to college. It's a little weird, bud. A little weird, as if that's not extremely fucking weird. But I need some of you to realize that a 17-year-old and 18-year-old can be in the same fucking math class. The same grade. They're probably going to graduate high school together. They are the same age. Now, where does this moral panic come from? The law. Let me make it very clear. I do not respect the law. I don't see the law as a dictation of my personal morals, because, say it with me now, legality does not equal morality. Now, I'm going to be very careful to say that I'm not saying this in a libertarian right sort of way. I fucking hate the lib-right motherfuckers, because they've made it impossible to talk about this without being accused of being a pedophile, because they use that same argument, unfortunately, to try to justify them going after 14-year-olds. Big government bad, which means that I get to have sex with a 14-year-old. No, that's not what that means. Big government bad, I get to, make my own moral code, which clearly states someone my age having sex with a 14-year-old is bad. I don't let the law dictate that for me. I dictate that for me. But other people do not share the same sentiment because they do like to suck off the government. It's one of their favorite pastimes. Legality does not equal morality. If that were the case, then technically in a lot of states, it's moral to conversion therapy your gay child. Do you really think that that's true? Because that is what you're saying when you say legality equals morality. Please do not let the government dictate what is moral and what is not moral. Holy shit, that is a recipe for disaster. The reason why I think an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old being in a relationship is immoral is because I say so. Because it is. Not because the government told me to. In fact, I'm going to go further. I still think it's immoral for a 30-year-old to go after an 18-year-old just because they're of legal age. What business does that grown-ass 30-year-old have going after someone that could still be in high school? You know what? I'm doing the opposite of lib-right right now, and I'm saying it's still fucking predation, and it's still creepy for a 30-year-old to go after an 18-year-old. I don't care about the law. You're still fucking weird. And I think that's what I mean by strict rule following, is that they see this legal adult age, and they immediately put all of their morals into that. And it also pushes this narrative that, when you're 17, you're like, ooh, woo, I'm baby. And then all of a sudden, when you hit midnight on your birthday, all of a sudden, you're like big bad adult, when you were literally the same person 2 hours ago. A 17-year-old and an 18-year-old are the same age. It's not pedophilia. It's not predatory unless there is grooming involved, because once again, people of the same age can groom each other. Children can groom other children. Adults can groom other adults. Adults can groom children. It's almost as if abuse can happen in all dynamics. Who would have fucking thought? Nick, nobody's freaking out over an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old dating. Oh boy, I fucking wish I had the same internet experience that you've had. Because I've seen, I don't know if they were adults or children, unfortunately. That's where we're at right now. Harass an 18-year-old and 17-year-old couple into breaking up because it's illegal, which that's like not true. I will say that the excessive policing of dating around the age of 18 is a bit weird, because there is like exceptions in the law about that. Like if you're within 2 years of age, it's technically not illegal. So even if you are like a government cuck or whatever, like it's still not illegal. But that's besides the point. That's not morally, without the law, bad either, because they're the same fucking age. Look me in the eyes. You're telling me a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old are that much different that it's predation? Go touch some grass. It's so overused, but it needs to be said. Go outside. Talk to a real person, because that is not predation. I'm sorry. He was not, in fact, sorry. The discourse is not just contained to age discourse where, 19-year-olds and 17-year-olds get accused of being in a grooming relationship, even though they're the same age. One of them could literally just be starting college, and the other one could literally be at the same college. Like, case by case. No, this is not contained just to that. It gets worse. Now, because of the pedophilia moral panic, people are now saying that certain adult and adult relationships are pedophilic. And they're doing this by assigning child-coded features and assigning adult-coded features. Which, holy shit, that is a thing to unpack, isn't it? That's a deep iceberg there. There's a lot I have wrong with that. But as an example, so you're not like just in the dark, there's been height discourse in fandom, and I've also seen, people judge people with huge height differences in their relationships, and they've been calling it pedophilic. A pedophilic grooming height difference. Bestie. Adults can be short. Children can be tall. I don't know why the fuck you think an adult dating another adult could possibly be pedophilic. If, let's say they're both 25 or something, that's not pedophilia. That's an adult dating another adult. What the fuck is wrong with some of you? You don't need to look into and pathologize everything. I promise. Some of you TikTok motherfuckers need to stop psychoanalyzing shit that doesn't need to be psychoanalyzing. Stop pathologizing everything. Literally, unless you have a degree in psychology, I need you to not do that anymore. Thank you. It's getting weird, and I don't trust any TikTok motherfucker to say something about anything ever. But it's stuff like that. They'll say that certain features are child-coded, and certain features are adult-coded, which I have a huge problem with for lots of different reasons. First of all, they'll child code and adult code heights. Anyone under 5'6" is minor coded. You're fucking weird. Adults can be short and children can be tall. I've met a 13-year-old boy that was 6'5". Oh, sorry, he's adult coded now. That's an adult because the weirdos that are obsessed with pedophilia moral panic said so. But also things like body hair. Stretch marks were one of them. Voices, oh my god, voices is a problem too. They're making all of this stuff adult coded and child coded. Here's the thing. When you do that stuff, you are not only infantilizing adults that don't have the adult coded features, you are maturing children that do have those adult coded features. I had someone try to argue with me about me being against calling men pedophiles for, not wanting hairy legs on their girlfriend. I have different issues with that, as in he should not be controlling what she does with her hairy legs, but I don't think he's a pedophile for it. I think he's been brainwashed by big hygiene to think that hairy legs equal bad hygiene, and, men are held, to a lesser standard for hygiene, so men can get away with it. That's the reasoning for it. It's not pedophilia, because when you say that it's pedophilia, you are saying that adult women that naturally aren't that hairy are children, and you are saying that children, 13-year-olds, that are naturally hairy are more adult. You are doing the same thing pedophiles do to justify sleeping with a 16-year-old, but in reverse. Oh, she looks like an adult, and therefore it's not pedophilia for me to sleep with her. No, it is. You're a fucking weirdo. But you're doing the same thing in reverse when you child code and adult code a real person. You can't do that with a real person. There's an argument to be made about, fictional characters, because while real people are not made with intent, fictional characters are made with intent, so gets a little fuzzy there. But I will say that every time you adult code or child code a real person, you are maturing a child and infantilizing an adult. I had someone argue with me and try to say, like, well, yes, shortness does not just exist in childhood, but we're not just talking about that. That seems like you haven't thought about that in a complex way, because like it also includes like stretch marks, for instance. Men aren't attracted to stretch marks, and stretch marks don't exist in childhood but do exist in adult women. There's a lot wrong I have with that statement. First and foremost, children do have stretch marks. There are 13-year-olds with stretch marks. Please don't say generalized shit like that. Yes, they are going through puberty, but they are still children. That 13-year-old is a child, and they're still a child despite their stretch marks. So that's first and foremost wrong. It's just plain wrong. Stretch marks do exist in childhood. Second of all, there are adult women without stretch marks, and they deserve to feel sexy without them, without feeling like their partner is a fucking pedophile. And 3, why did your mind immediately jump to pedophilia about men not liking stretch marks and not the obvious answer to that, which is people don't like, scars on skin. They don't like blemishes. People like smooth, clear skin because it looks better aesthetically. Why is that not the first thing your brain jumps to? Because that's the obvious and correct assumption. I do think partially this could be an issue where men don't understand the prevalence of stretch marks because of media. So that's partially, Photoshop's fault. But I'd personally liken the situation to, men don't find stretch marks attractive the same way they don't find acne attractive. It's a blemish on the body. And that's a completely different conversation we need to have, where we address that people need to start reworking attractiveness in their brain and start understanding that how someone looks is the least important thing about them. A more body neutrality stance I'm in support of. I don't think that's pedophilia. That's the issue here, is that all of this comes down to pedophilia, accusing grown men attracted to grown women of pedophilia, when that's literally the opposite of pedophilia, because that's a grown woman, and she deserves to feel sexy despite the fact that you seem to think her features are child-coded. It infantilizes adults, it matures children, and that maturing children part is the part that's concerning to me, because that shows me that you are not actually invested in stopping pedophilia, because you're making the problem worse by adult coding certain features. There are very developed teenage girls. They are still children. But because of this logic here, you're saying that men attracted to them aren't pedophiles because that's a well-developed, adult-looking teenage girl. What's the problem? Oh, the problem is that she's still a fucking child. That's a teenage girl, you weirdo. I just think that accusing men of pedophilia and throwing around the word pedophilia to own the patriarchy is doing more harm than it is good. I think you're infantilizing women, and I think you're maturing girls. I think it's not doing what you think it's doing. And wouldn't you know, this also devolved into gatekeeping interests in adults, throwing around the word pedophile to Disney adults because they like children's things. Disney adults, you know what, just let them have fun, dude. I don't care. But saying that because something that you've decided is only for children is now indicative of pedophilia because an adult likes it, that's insane. There's not even another person to be attracted to involved, and yet you're throwing around the word pedophilia. Hot take, people can dress how they want, regardless of whether you see that as for children or not. People can have certain interests regardless if you think it's for children or not. Adults are allowed to enjoy things that you've decided is child-coded. They were a child at one point. They might want to heal their inner child by, collecting squishmallows or whatever the fuck they do. I think they're allowed to do that without somebody calling it creepy or pedophilic, which still blows my mind that people will do that, because once again, there is no attraction involved in liking squishmallows. So how are you just going to throw around the word pedophile just because this person enjoys something that you've deemed for children? And who would have guessed it? People just throwing around the word pedophile to own the patriarchy and, to just throw it around, I guess, has racist consequences. I've actually been talking against this for a long time because I've had to deal with boy group stans in K-pop. It's unfortunately now devolved to the point of racism against Asian women. Wow, who would have fucking guessed? Who would have guessed that, child coding and adult coding certain features, interests, etc., would eventually devolve into racism like it always does? Well, first and foremost, an adult woman can wear a tennis skirt and still be an adult woman. Wow, I cannot believe I had to say that, but here we are. Because the aesthetic of, certain K-pop concepts or certain Japanese concepts are cute, they give off this cute concept. People have been accusing that of pedophilia. There's a bit of nuance there because I do think that directors will do it on purpose to attract pedophiles, which there's the nuance. But to say that they are dressing and acting like children, like the girls themselves are dressing and acting like children, regardless if it's their style or not, because it is a K-pop or J-pop concept, is ludicrous, because they could actually enjoy dressing up like that as an adult without the influence of directors and big CEOs. We see plenty of examples of this on TikTok of grown adults doing kawaii fashion. They don't do that under the influence of big CEOs, and they certainly don't do it a lot of times they don't do it for sexual reasons. They just enjoy dressing like that. And they are still, say it with me now, adult women. Now, what I mean by it devolves into racism is the other day I saw a TikTok screenshot, and the TikTok itself said, "Why do men enjoy fetishizing Asian women so much?" And the comment of the day said, "Because they look and act like children." How do you not see how fucking racist that is? By saying there are certain features that are, child-coded and adult-coded, you are eventually going to hit a racism block there, because that would inherently make certain women with more body hair more adult and women with less body hair less adult. And eventually it will lead to racism, like the white woman in the comments of that TikTok that decided racism was the choice. Engaging in kawaii fashion and wearing a tennis skirt or whatever does not, negate adulthood. That is still an adult woman, and she is allowed to dress that way, because why is there a certain way to dress as an adult and a certain way to dress as a child? And a lot of this altogether seems like it's hurting children more than it's helping children. It's hurting adults more than it's helping children. A lot of this seems counterproductive, and it seems like we aren't focusing on, the Discord grooming epidemic going on. Like maybe we should be more concerned about the weirdos that are grooming 14-year-old girls on Discord. I'm worried about actual pedophilia cases. I'm worried about actual pedophilia. Not, oh, that woman's wearing a pink tennis skirt. She is helping the patriarchy, and, she is a disgrace to feminists everywhere because she wears a pink tennis skirt. Like, shut the fuck up. In the end, I think a lot of this is hurting children more than it's helping children. I think you are accidentally adultifying children, and you are affirming the same logic pedophiles use to go after certain children. I think you are affirming the same logic certain feminists use to shit on other women. A lot of this does feel like the same concept as real women are curvy. God, I fucking hate that shit. No, real women are women. Who would have fucking guessed it? Yeah, that's the rant. I'm just sick and tired of people making a mockery out of the word pedophilia because that's such an important word that we can't turn into an internet buzzword. But you've done it anyways. Congrats.